Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. Isn't Cheryl amazing? I want to thank Cheryl Morse for that beautiful introduction, but I want to thank her even more for standing up for her community, for standing up for affordable housing, for making sure that the amazing family that is that building can stay together and have all that New York City has to offer. Let's thank her for what she's done for Fort Greene and all of us. I want to thank Mitchell Wallerstein and everyone at Baruch. It is an honor to be in this wonderful college that epitomizes opportunity and possibility for all New Yorkers. Let's thank everyone at Baruch. Let's thank the extremely talented Officer Leggio of the NYPD for the beautiful rendition of the national anthem. And let's thank Frederick Trapp, the Sanitation Department, for all he does for us. Thank you. Good week for the Sanitation Department. Well done. I want to thank my friend, Reverend Gabriel Salguero, for his wonderful blessing on us all and for all he does for this city. Let's thank Reverend Salguero. I want to thank all my colleagues in government who are here, Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Public Advocate Tish James, Comptroller Scott Stringer. I want to thank the borough presidents, the district attorneys, the members of Congress, the City Council, the state legislature, all of whom have joined us, all the members of my administration who are here, who make our government work every day and do an extraordinary job. I want to thank all of them for their commitment and the energy they've shown over this last year. Let's give all of them a round of applause. There's one member of my administration I feel particularly strongly about. I'll mention her in a moment. But the reason I met her is really due to a thanks I owe a previous boss of mine who created an environment where good things happen and people got to meet each other. I'm referring, of course, to Mayor David Dinkins. Thank you for all you have done for this city. And even though you did not know you were arranging a blind date between Shirlane and I, that's what happened. And because of you, I met the love of my life who is doing so much good for this city, our First Lady, Shirlane McRae. I want to thank everyone who's here. I want to thank all my fellow New Yorkers who are watching and listening, because we are truly all in this together. We are all in this together to make this city a better place, but also to keep making it a place for everyone. And so I want to begin by talking about one New Yorker. I want to tell you a story, a distinctly New York story. More than 100 years ago, a young woman named Anna Briganti arrived in our city after emigrating from Grassano, a small town in southern Italy, rich in natural beauty, but scarce in opportunities for its people. Anna traded in picturesque hillsides and small-town familiarity for an apartment at 205 East 17th Street in Manhattan, just a short walk away from here, a place lacking the tranquil comforts of her childhood, a neighborhood where few spoke her native language. But Anna's new home offered her something that her old one just did not: profound possibilities to create a better life for herself and for her children. So, in the year 1910, a decade before our country granted women the right to vote, Anna opened her own business, an embroidery company, and she called it the Mrs. Briganti. Its very name, a proud symbol of single women who opened this business together, the Mrs. referring to her sister, her mother, and herself. Three women, over 100 years ago, three immigrant women who opened a business that thrived. Anna Briganti was my grandmother, and I'm here because of her. I'm here because of her And so many of us can tell a very, very similar story of who we're here because of, who made our lives in this city possible. Now, my grandmother's story, like most New York success stories, was not a fairy tale. She did not stumble upon success through luck or charm. She forged it with hard work and raw grit. And she lived in a place that rewarded those things in unique and powerful ways. For generations, New York City has been a place that has unleashed human potential, a place offering opportunity for everyone, no matter how your life story began. Opportunity for innovators and visionaries to write new chapters in our history, and for parents and grandparents to write brighter ones for the next generation. Now, here's the hard truth. All of that is at risk today. It's at risk because so many who live in our city struggle to afford to be here. And since only half of New Yorkers speak just English at home, let me say that a different way. Por generaciones, Nueva York ha sido una ciudad que le da rienda suelta al potencial humano. Pero aquí está la dura verdad. Todo eso está hoy en riesgo. Está en riesgo porque a muchas personas que viven aquí les cuesta demasiado poder quedarse aquí. Nosotros queremos cambiar eso. You can see it all over New York City. In the eyes of a single mother in Coney Island, working 2 jobs and barely scraping together enough for a modest apartment to share with her kids. You can see it in the worn hands of a fast food worker in Washington Heights, consumed with worry as the calendar approaches the first of the month when the rent is due. You can see it in the furrowed brow of a senior in Rosebank in Staten Island as she sweeps her porch to chase away thoughts of whether she's saved enough to stay in her small house in the only neighborhood she's ever called home. If we do not act, and act boldly, New York risks taking on the qualities of a gated community, a place defined by exclusivity rather than opportunity. And we cannot let that happen. We will not let that happen. Over the past 2 years, I've spoken about the need to take dead aim at the tale of 2 cities and about our vision for creating one New York, rising together, a city where everyone has a shot at the middle class. And while we have so much more work to do, we should take heart from what was achieved in 2014. 2014 was a year of great progress in our effort to address inequality and lift up all our families. Let me give you some examples. We achieved full-day pre-K for more than 50,000 of our kids. And there's more to come in 2015. We nearly doubled enrollment in after-school programs for middle school kids in all 5 boroughs. By executive order, we expanded living wage coverage to 18,000 more workers. With the help of the City Council and the very strong and forceful leadership of my partner in government, Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, we secured paid sick leave for 500,000 more New Yorkers. We ended the overuse of stop and frisk, reducing stops by over 75%. And since we instituted our new marijuana policy just months ago, arrests are down almost 65%. At the same time, thanks to our courageous men and women in uniform, we've not only kept New York City safe, we've made it even safer. Our NYPD officers helped bring the city's crime rate to an all-time low, with the smallest number of murders, robberies, and burglaries in our history. At the FDNY, they responded to a record 1.6 million emergency calls, always at the ready when New Yorkers need help. And let's thank everyone at the Correction Department. They made sweeping reforms last year, including an end to punitive segregation for adolescents in city jails. Also in 2014, we fought to keep our streets safe and clear and clean for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers alike. We established Vision Zero, bringing pedestrian deaths to a level not seen since 1910. And I just want to say, we had high hopes for Vision Zero, and we're going to do even more. But if you had told me together in year one, we would bring deaths down to a level of a century ago, I would have told you you were being too ambitious. But it never hurts to be ambitious when we're trying to do good for our people, does it? We handled, in 2014, one of the snowiest winters our city has ever seen, with 11 winter storms. You remember those, Frederick? All 11 of them. And after our sanitation workers did an extraordinary job clearing the streets, let's thank them. I was watching the news this morning. You're going to have more business soon, Frederick. Don't you worry. There's going to be more thrills ahead. After sanitation workers did an incredible job clearing our streets, our Department of Transportation workers filled nearly 500,000 potholes. In 2014, we took on climate change and the damage inflicted by the extreme weather linked to it. We built on the strong environmental record of the Bloomberg administration by committing to 80 by 50, and this is incredibly important. It is a game changer. A dramatic 80% reduction in greenhouse gases in our city by the year 2050. That's what we're going to achieve. And we will be retrofitting not just some of our city buildings, but every public building by 2025. We helped repair the devastation wrought by Superstorm Sandy, beating even our own ambitious goals, with construction starts on more than 1,000 homes and badly needed reimbursements provided to more than 2,000 homeowners. And I want to be clear that in this year, 2015, every reimbursement check owed to homeowners will be in their hands by the end of this year. We are committed to that. From Staten Island to Canarsie to the Rockaways and so many other parts of our city, families hit by the storm have been through so much. This administration will finish the job of helping them rebuild. In 2014, we balanced our budget, and we did it in a way that was honest, responsible, and in keeping with our progressive values. We came to contract agreements with over 71% of the city's workforce. 71%. And if you want a comparison, that's up from 0 the year before that. We signed deals that are fair to both our city workers and our taxpayers. We awarded $690 million in contracts to minority and women-owned businesses. That is a 57% increase from the year before. And we connected more New Yorkers to jobs, health care, and our social safety net. We created the Tech Talent Pipeline to link New Yorkers from every borough and background to the booming tech industry. This is an industry that's going to do great things in the city. We're going to make sure it's a 5-borough industry. It now employs over 300,000 people, and it's growing every day, and we're going to make sure it's available to all New Yorkers. We invested, you can clap for that. We invested capital in new economic hubs to create 3,000 new jobs at the Brooklyn Navy Yard and 1,000 new jobs at the Brooklyn Army Terminal that will be there for years and years to come. Quality middle-class jobs that people can actually feed a family on. We announced our plan to redesign our workforce development system to arm up to 30,000 New Yorkers a year with the skills for 21st century jobs, the actual skills people need for the jobs that are available now. We ended the fear of communities being left without critical care services when their hospitals were closed without warning, a fear that hung over too many communities for too long, and began the process of opening half a dozen new community health clinics in neighborhoods that need them the most. I know there's a lot of people in the room who can relate to this one. We ended a ticket blitz on our small businesses. And we are on track to save them $5 million in petty fines, money they can put towards things like building their business and hiring more people. With the help of the City Council, we created ID NYC, and it's available, as I think people know by now, it's available to all, citizens and undocumented New Yorkers alike. And let me be clear how important this is as a statement of the values of this city. This city built on the toil of immigrants for generations. We, as New Yorkers, will never relegate any of our fellow New Yorkers to the shadows. We will not allow it. And ladies and gentlemen, the people have responded to the new opportunity created by ID NYC, a bit more than we expected, I might add. I'm happy to report that less than a month after this program's inception, more than 180,000 New Yorkers have already made an appointment to get their ID. And we began a major new effort. And this one has very far-reaching implications, and it's a tough subject that needs a lot more attention, and it's about to get it. We began a new effort, led by our inspiring First Lady, to address the gaps in mental health coverage in New York City. This issue is personal. It's personal for all of us. It's personal to Shirlane and me. And I have talked to so many people who understand why we have to take this on, why we have to talk out loud and strive to address an issue that for too long was swept under the rug. So many families have watched as their loved ones fell through the cracks of an inadequate system. We have to change that. And I can't think of a smarter, stronger, more compassionate person to lead our effort for change than our First Lady. Let's thank her. In 2014, we opened new doors of opportunity for our young people. We've begun to create 128 community schools Schools that serve the whole child, offering everything from vision tests and mental health screenings to family counseling and tutoring. We created 62 Pro Schools. It's a fresh, new model where teachers and principals work together to set aside DOE and union rules alike, rules that sometimes hinder innovation. And in this new approach, we can better serve our kids. We also invested in renewal schools to fix 94 struggling schools, to save these schools and make them what they should be, make them schools that any parent would be proud to send their child to, because every child in every neighborhood deserves a quality education. Now, all of these things will make our neighborhoods stronger, and they'll make life better for so many people in our city. But let me state the obvious. You can't tap in to all that's good about New York, all the opportunities New York has to offer, if you can't afford to actually live here. So, let me put it this way. While the state of our city is strong, we face a profound challenge. If we fail to be a city for everyone, we risk losing what makes New York, New York. We risk losing the very soul of this place if it isn't a place for every kind of person. It is what's made us great, and it will make us great again in the future, but only if we act now. And nothing more clearly expresses the inequality gap, the opportunity gap, than the soaring cost of housing. The math is straightforward and sobering. In 2014, 56% of rental households in New York were spending more than 30% of their income on housing. That's up 10 points in little more than a decade. Now, officially speaking, spending more than 30% of your income on housing means you are rent burdened. And it's a fair description because the cost of living becomes a heavier and heavier burden for everyday New Yorkers when it reaches that kind of level. And it's a burden not just on their wallets, but on their hopes and aspirations as well. So how did we end up here? Well, part of the problem is that the city has for decades let developers write their own rules when it came to building housing. Sometimes projects included affordable housing, but far too often they did not. And as the city expanded, our growth was guided primarily by the developer's bottom line. That meant a bias towards luxury housing, units that fetched top dollar but were entirely out of reach for everyday New Yorkers. Multi-million-dollar homes that drove up rents in the neighborhoods, all without a corresponding menu of affordable new options. This administration is taking a fundamentally different approach, one that not only recognizes the need for more affordable housing, but demands it. How will we do this? First, we're writing new rules for how we're going to build this city. Ones that mandate affordable housing as a condition of development in areas rezoned for residential use. Second, we'll do everything in our power to keep those who already have affordable housing in the homes they love. And third, we know it's a crowded place. There's only so much land in New York City. So we'll create more affordable housing by literally building up, adding density to appropriate parts of our city. Now, let me explain what this means. We are not embarking on a mission to build towering skyscrapers where they don't belong. We have a duty to protect and preserve the culture and character of our neighborhoods, and we will do so. And as we invest in affordable housing, we'll also work with communities to preserve the fabric of our neighborhoods and invest in things that great neighborhoods need, like parks and schools and shops and restaurants and things that give jobs and opportunity and small business opportunity to all the people of the neighborhood. Now, there are some places in our city that have not yet been developed or zoned for housing, but could be and should be. And by taking steps like adding residential buildings to former manufacturing sites, or adding some buildings in appropriate places in our neighborhood, some even as small as 6 or 8 stories, we could make a fundamental difference in the level of affordability in that neighborhood. And that means families being able to stay in the neighborhood. Families being able to thrive in the place they call their own. Some people will tell you that any development is a challenge. I look at the right kind of development, led by the people's needs, as the way to make sure our people get to live here. Our people aren't forced out. Our people get to be a part of that New York that has always been so strong and can only be strong in the future if our people can live here, every kind of people. Now, will it be difficult? I can't hear you. Yes. Audience participation, yes it will be. Anyone who tells you otherwise hasn't spent much time in New York City. But let me give you a parallel. Let me remind you of a very difficult challenge we overcame just last year, one that was to many insurmountable, in fact. I will say, of all the efforts we made in 2014 to address income inequality, the most prominent, and in some ways the most satisfying, was our successful bid to secure universal full-day pre-K. Prominent and satisfying because it was bold and meaningful and would touch the lives of thousands and thousands and thousands of families in a way that would literally frame better futures for them and their children. Now, some of you were around last year. You may remember what the pundits said and all the wise observers who told us it could not be done. The naysayers said we would never find the funding. Other naysayers said we would never find the space or the teachers. That simply couldn't be done on that kind of timeline. They literally were implying that somehow we should go less fast, be less bold, and it was okay if we didn't serve all those kids right now. We believed we had to serve all those kids right now. That was our obligation. Well, there are some naysayers, but there's a lot more people who believe that things can be better and are willing to do something about it. So, last year we saw it thanks to the tremendous energy of parents and activists and community leaders and elected officials. Good everyday New Yorkers who cared. We proved the cynics wrong. And when it comes to affordable housing, we will prove them wrong again. In fact, we've already started. We're already making real progress towards a more affordable New York. Here's how. First, last year, our Rent Guidelines Board passed the smallest rent increase ever in its history, based on the facts. They helped protect tenants from being squeezed unfairly by landlords. Second, we're following through on a plan to build and preserve affordable housing on an unprecedented scale, and that began in earnest in 2014 The vision was to build at a speed we had not yet seen before. We committed to the construction of 80,000 new units of affordable housing by 2024. 80,000 new units, plus 120,000 preserved units. Now, to understand what this means, let me first talk about the new building. To achieve 80,000 new affordable units by 2024, that means building at twice the average annual rate of the last 25 years. That takes will and that takes focus. And guess what? We have those things. And we will achieve that because our people need that housing now. When you combine that with the 120,000 preserved units, 200,000 is the total, and that is enough housing for 500,000 New Yorkers. 500,000. Would you like a comparison? I think you would. 500,000 is more people than within the city limits of Miami. Take that, Miami. That's what our housing plan does. It's real, it's tangible, it will make a huge impact on families' lives. If you want a copy, I have one here. For everyone here today, you can get a copy of our plan. For those listening or watching, go to nyc.gov and look at what this will mean for our neighborhoods and our families. We're already moving on this plan. We announced it last May, and we said we had to achieve substantial goals immediately. We had to go beyond even that which we thought could be done in the first year if we wanted to achieve our overall goal. So we said, okay, we're going to do that. In 2014, we have to create 16,000 units. That was our goal, to put the plans in place, to put the financing in place for 16,000 units. Well, by the end of 2014, we had beat that goal, and we had achieved 17,300 units, 1,300 more than the plan. Now, I'm going to say this throughout, and I'll probably say it a few hundred more times over the next few years. 1,300 more units than were planned means 1,300 more families for whom the #1 expense in their life has been addressed. And then all other things are possible for them. If you can afford to live here, then everything else becomes possible. What you want for your children, what you want for your career, what you want to do to take advantage of this great city. That difference, 1,300 more families, that's the way we win this, family by family, unit by unit, until we meet our goal. Now, that's the affordable piece. That's the core of the vision. But meanwhile, if we want this city to be more affordable, we need more market housing too, because there's going to be a lot more people here. The projection is 9 million people by 2040. So we're going to make sure that every kind of housing is built. We have a plan for the construction of 160,000 units of market rate housing on top of the 200,000 units of affordable housing. All told, this plan will create hundreds of thousands of construction jobs over the next decade. Hundreds of thousands of construction jobs and over 20,000 permanent jobs for the people of this city. Now, you can hear the urgency. And to achieve this kind of ambitious plan, we need to do things differently. We need to cut a lot of red tape. We need to speed things up. So you're going to see some different things, some things we've been waiting for a long time to help create the right kind of development, to help businesses of all kinds do their work and employ our people. What we have needed for many, many years is fundamental reform at the Department of Buildings. To my brothers and sisters in the City Council, I remember in the 8 years I was a council member how many complaints I got about the Department of Buildings. I believe they led in that category each year. Can you relate to that? This agency simply must better serve its customers, including thousands and thousands of small businesses that fuel our economy. So, we will add personnel, we'll add automation, we'll speed up inspections, we'll cut bureaucracy so that more jobs and housing can be built for the people of this city. And our urgency demands of us new tools across the board. We're always looking for a different and better way to do things, and a lot of people in this room are going to help us find better ways. And one that should have happened long ago in this city but will happen now is mandatory inclusionary zoning. It's an idea we need. I mentioned it earlier. It's a simple idea of requiring affordability in all major developments. It's a simple idea. It's not an option. It's not a maybe. It's a requirement. It has to happen. That's the way we change the reality of our city. Now, you want a living example of this approach? Look at Astoria Cove in Queens. As a result of the mandatory inclusionary zoning framework adopted by this administration, and I tip my cap, the City Council's very tough negotiations, 465 units of affordable housing will be created on this one site alone. 465 units. Guess what I'm going to say next? That's 465 families whose lives will be changed forever, who can live here, can live in their neighborhood, can afford to be New Yorkers rather than having to go find a different city they can afford. It means that hundreds of kids will grow up in the city that their parents and grandparents helped to create. Now, let me give you another comparison for perspective. Astoria Cove is a site in which the previous city zoning policy wouldn't have required any units of affordable housing. Zero. Literally, that was the original plan 1 year and 1 month ago. And earlier than that, 0 units of affordable housing. So if you want to see the difference that this policy change makes, just visualize the difference between 0 families having affordable housing and 465 families having affordable housing on just one site in Queens. That's an example of where we're going. And there are many more rezonings like this coming soon to neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. We will work with our colleagues in the council, with elected officials, with community activists and leaders to make sure each serves the needs of the neighborhood and creates affordable housing for the people of the neighborhood. These rezonings are coming in neighborhoods from East New York to Long Island City, from Flushing West to East Harlem, from downtown Staten Island to the Jerome Avenue corridor in the Bronx. All neighborhoods where people desperately want affordable housing so they can continue their lives. That's what we will bring. And we will make these neighborhoods both more affordable and stronger in the process. And there's one part of our vision that will truly be a game changer because it offers us something we haven't seen in a long time. It's an opportunity to keep our city affordable for thousands of New Yorkers, particularly in the borough of Queens. I'm referring to Sunnyside Yards. Now, right now, there are 200 acres of land in the heart of Queens, land that exists in the form of a rail yard, and only a rail yard. Let me emphasize, that rail yard has provided jobs for generations of people. It's a good thing, and it needs to be there, and it will be there. But it's a fact that those tracks could be underground, allowing us to build housing on top. And we intend so much of that housing to be affordable for the people of that community and beyond. At Sunnyside Yards, we envision a plan that incorporates what a truly strong neighborhood needs: access to mass transportation, parks, schools, retail stores, and job opportunities. Now, let me emphasize, 200 acres. 200 acres is a lot of land in New York City. We know that this site has different parts of it. Some parts could easily handle larger buildings being built there. Other parts of this site could not. We'll work closely with elected officials and community leaders to determine what makes sense and how to build this the right way. Now, this is an extraordinary opportunity, but the idea is not particularly novel because developments that prioritize affordability and livability have been built before. Some of the great examples around this city: Starrett City, Co-op City, Stuytown and Peter Cooper Village, and the Big Six Towers in Woodside, Queens, all examples of developments that gave so much to generations of New Yorkers. And these developments created affordability on a grand scale because the mission was to reach as many working people as possible. Stuytown, when it opened in 1947, provided our city with 11,250 affordable apartments. A community where trees and parks and shops dotted the landscape and residents could see the sky, kind of place that working and middle-class people feel good about living. We're bringing that same kind of scale and a real sense of urgency to Sunnyside Yards. And we're going to set the exact same goal for affordability, the goal of 11,250 affordable units in a neighborhood that anyone would be proud to live in. That's enough housing for over 30,000 hardworking New Yorkers, and it will be a game changer. And I want to make a clear point, because we've all watched over the last decade with real concern what's happened with Stuytown and Peter Cooper. That history is not over yet, and we're going to fight to protect affordability. But I want to make a clear contrast. Unlike what happened there, we're going to make sure that affordable housing at Sunnyside Yards stays that way, stays affordable for the long term, is guaranteed affordable for the long term. To paraphrase one of my former employers, it takes a village to build a neighborhood. So we look forward to working with the whole community, with our elected officials. We look forward to partnering with Amtrak and the MTA in an extraordinary effort to create something wonderful for all at Sunnyside Yards. Let me talk about another transformative opportunity that lies in the Lower Concourse neighborhood on the waterfront of the South Bronx. And when I say that, for a lot of people, when you hear the phrase South Bronx, unfortunately, we go back in time in our minds. We remember that phrase as synonymous with profound urban problems. But the South Bronx has been coming back strong, and waterfront development will be a big step forward. When we look at this new project, we don't think about what used to define the South Bronx. We think about what will define the South Bronx in the future as a great community for all. With a $200 million capital investment, we can stimulate the development of 4,000 new units of housing, much of it affordable, and provide the parks, schools, and commercial development that support a growing, thriving neighborhood. And we look forward to partnering with Speaker Mark Viverito and our colleagues in government to make an investment that will bring hope and opportunity to a neighborhood that deserves it. There's tremendous potential in the South Bronx, and there's tremendous potential in other neighborhoods that have often been left behind. And if you want to talk about a neighborhood that has often been left behind and has not been given the opportunity to reach its potential. Let's talk about the Rockaways. Battered by years of economic distress, even before Sandy's gale force wind struck, there's no place in our city that has persevered through more challenges. Our plan will jumpstart the process of acquiring underutilized properties in the Rockaways, and I mean areas that are blighted or vacant and have been not just for years, in some cases for decades. And we will create new affordable housing for thousands. But anyone who thinks about that immediately will say to themselves, well, wait a minute, if we're going to have affordable housing, how are we going to help people get around? What's the role of transportation in making sure people have access to opportunity and connecting to where the jobs are all over the 5 boroughs? Well, we thought about that for years. For years, the conventional wisdom in this town has been that certain neighborhoods are simply doomed to isolation because of their geography. And we reject that notion. Today, if you live in one of those neighborhoods, the Rockaways or Red Hook or Soundview, among others, a job in Manhattan can easily mean an hour or more of commuting, even when the skyline is clearly visible from your home. You can actually see the opportunities in that borough, but practically speaking, it's very, very far away. We will change that. Today, we announced that we're launching a new citywide ferry service to open for business in 2017. We're a city that has been great for literally centuries because of our waterways. We're the ultimate coastal city, but somehow we haven't had a true ferry system in decades. We need to right this wrong, to open up great possibilities for our people, to take places that were isolated and felt isolated and give them opportunity and connection. Now, a lot of smart people in this audience will say, wait a minute, if the ferry costs too much for a lot of hardworking people, it just won't be possible to use it. Even if it's a great opportunity, you have to be able to use it. So, our ferry system will be based on a new model. The rides on these ferries will be priced the same as a MetroCard fare. So ferries will be affordable to everyday New Yorkers, just like our subways and buses. And for residents of the Rockaways, of Red Hook, of Soundview, among other neighborhoods, opportunity will be closer and more available. And it's not just about connecting residents to the many jobs that exist in Manhattan. A new citywide ferry system will spur the development of new commercial corridors in the outer boroughs as well. Create jobs in those neighborhoods for people who need them there. And we want mass transit to be more available throughout the outer boroughs, because we know that will unlock so much for so many people. So we're going to expand bus rapid transit, or BRT. Our plan is for routes serving 400,000 New Yorkers along key thoroughfares like Utica Avenue in Brooklyn and Woodhaven Boulevard in Queens, completing a network of 20 routes over the next 4 years. Now, BRT will cut transit time on existing routes from 15% to 25%. That means New Yorkers spending less time in transit and more time living their lives, more access to the things they need. That's the kind of quality of life we want to build for all New Yorkers. We want everyone to have access to what is here. And there are some New Yorkers we have a particular obligation to and a particular need to support. Let's talk about our veterans. Let's talk about what we owe them. When my dad came home from World War II, when Shirlane's dad came home from World War II, our veterans were embraced, There were great opportunities made available to them. There was a lot of support. It was visible. It was available. What we saw over recent decades was so many veterans who didn't get the help they needed. So much so that we ended up having a phenomenon in this city and cities around the nation, veteran homelessness. Think about that phrase and what a moral indictment it is, veteran homelessness. We have made a pledge, and we're working closely with the Obama administration on this, that we will end chronic homelessness among veterans this year in New York City. Those who fight abroad to protect our freedom should never be left without a home here in the country they defended. It makes no sense. We won't let it happen. Second, I want to talk about those we owe so much to, and you saw the picture of Anna Briganti before. As I said, I wouldn't be here without her. We all owe so much to the seniors in our lives who made it all possible. So as part of our affordable housing plan, we will provide 10,000 units of affordable housing for seniors. These are people who have worked their whole lives hard to make this a great city, deserve to retire in dignity. And we know so many of them are on fixed incomes. When the prices around them rise, they don't have a choice. They don't have a way to get new income. They need our help, and they will get our help. They deserve our help. Third, I want to talk about a community that is so important to everything that makes New York City great and has been for generations. Our cultural community, our artists, our musicians. We know that New York City is a place with a legend, in fact. Struggling, hardworking people grew up here, came here from around the country, came here from around the world with a simple dream to create something. A lot of them struggled. A lot of them struggle today. Through their struggles, through their vision, they create extraordinary things that came to define this place. We received so much from them. It helped make us a great global capital. But a lot of times, they kept struggling. So, for all those generations of artistic visionaries, we want to do something different now. We'll provide 1,500 units of affordable live-work housing for artists and musicians who make New York City such a great and vibrant place. As well as 500 dedicated affordable workspaces for the cultural community. These folks bring joy to us every day. They inspire our young people. They show our young people that you can pursue talents, whichever talent moves you, whichever talent you have, regardless of whether it comes with a necessary big payoff at the end of the day or a big paycheck. It shows our young people to hope and believe and strive. And on a practical note, these artists, musicians, the whole cultural community, they also help make our city a mecca for tourists. It's one of the reasons why in 2014, a record 56.4 million tourists visited this city, which is an astounding figure. So we're going to make sure we support people who have done so much for us. Our veterans, our seniors, our artists, and every one of them can understand why we need to address the affordable housing crisis. But even if you don't happen to be one of those individuals, you can feel it. You can feel it all over the city. You talk to almost any New Yorker, they'll tell you about the pinch they're feeling. They'll tell you about the challenge they're feeling. And they can see the changes around them every single day, and they feel a sense of insecurity, that those changes may somehow undermine their lives here. It's a complex dynamic, And it's a dynamic that actually needs to be discussed more openly and looked at more clearly and addressed in a more forthright manner. This is some phenomenon that everybody sees, everybody feels, but somehow isn't in the center of the discussion where it needs to be. I am, of course, talking about gentrification and all that it means for this city. And it is complex. If you ask 8.4 million New Yorkers their opinion on gentrification, you will get 8.4 million different answers. There's no question. And that's partly because gentrification combines some very good and very bad elements. Let's talk about the good first. Well, part of it is because of what's happened in this city that has made all of our lives better. After 2 decades of steadily declining crime, people are excited. They're excited to live here. People are excited to invest here. People want to come here from all over the world. That's a success that was created together. Everyone in this room contributed to the success over the last 20 years. All the men and women of the NYPD, all the community patrols, the resident patrols at NYCHA, it was something extraordinary. Our city became safer and safer. Our city became stronger and stronger. And with that came other things that strengthened us, people and resources who brought jobs, who helped create amenities for our neighborhoods, more activities, safer streets, all the things that indicate a vibrant neighborhood where people feel safe. They feel they have the things they need, that their children have the things they need. That has been, in many cases, a positive byproduct of gentrification. But the problem, the negative, comes when we reach the tipping point, when New Yorkers get priced out of their own neighborhood. And that has happened over and over again, but without a clear response from our city government. The problem's been visible. It's there for all to see, but the response hasn't been clear. And we want to change that. In the past, here's what we were essentially told. We were essentially told there was nothing we could do about it. That was the effective message. You can either have a safe and clean neighborhood, and the growth that will bring it, or you can have a neighborhood you can afford. But you can't have both. You can't have a safe, clean neighborhood you can afford. We think that's a false choice. We reject the notion that New Yorkers can't have both. We believe in this time we can have both, and we must have both, and we deserve both. We had a discussion of a colorful way to describe that false choice. There are many words you can use to talk about when you aren't being told the whole truth. We thought about a phrase my grandmother might have said. She might have called it una cavolata. Now, my staff and I have been discussing how we can say in a clean and appropriate way what a cavolata is. Let's just call it a foolish statement. You can create in your own mind what other ways you might say it. But that false choice makes no sense for New York City today. And part of how we address the false choice is to talk about the people who are part of this drama, the people who created this reality. There's good actors and bad actors. There's plenty of developers and landlords in this city who have worked to make it a better city, who have been fair to their tenants, who have worked with local leaders. And there's some really bad apples, too. Well, let's talk about them. First, there's slumlords. We've known about slumlords for generations in New York City. Go back to Jacob Riis and so many other commentators from a century ago. There's always been slumlords, people who refuse to make repairs. They let housing decay. They make apartments uninhabitable for the people they're supposed to be providing support for. That's been a problem for decades. It's a problem now. And just because it's been a problem for so long doesn't mean we won't challenge it at its foundation, because we will. We won't let business as usual allow so much harm to our people. And on top of the slumlords, there's a new phenomenon. You could call this group of individuals predatory landlords, people who take advantage of a red-hot real estate market. They employ some very ugly tactics to push out low-income tenants and moderate-income tenants because they want to make room for wealthier ones. These predatory landlords, they harass their tenants. They do all sorts of things. Sometimes they turn off the hot water. Sometimes they turn off the heat. Sometimes they refuse to follow the law and provide the basics of safety and sanitation. They're lawbreakers. They literally violate our laws, and they need to feel the consequence of their actions. But it's not just that they violate our laws, they violate our values as New Yorkers. They literally are trying to stop that perfect arc of this city where people have opportunity. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, that you have opportunity. That's what's endangered right now, because some people want to write a very different future for this city. And it's not a future we can afford to experience. I want to be clear. We cannot allow ourselves to become a place of exclusivity. We can't disconnect from our heart and our soul and our history. This has to be a place for everyone, or it won't work. It literally won't work. Now, we have tools to address these bad actors. I want to give you an example from a humble, simple time in the gauzy past when I was public advocate. And we published the worst landlords watch list. We targeted those who refused to make repairs on the units they controlled. They refused to give heat. They refused to give hot water. And this watch list helped tenants to organize. It helped law enforcement to be aggressive. And because of it, hundreds of buildings came off that list because they made the repairs that the tenants deserved. Thousands and thousands of tenants got a better quality of life. I want to take this moment to thank Public Advocate today, Tish James, for continuing that effort and doing it energetically. Tish doesn't do anything halfway. Thank you, Tish. So that's one example of the kind of thing that changed the rules of the game. But there's a lot more we have to do. There's a lot more we can and will do as a city. We're absolutely committed to using every tool we have to stop the harassment, to stop the lawbreakers, to protect affordable housing in every way. But we are not alone. There's another actor in this drama. Let's look to our north, because Albany has responsibility for enforcing our rent laws. But too often, that just doesn't happen. We need Albany to step up. We need Albany to enforce these laws aggressively, and we need it now. Every day in this city, people are losing their homes. We need Albany to recognize that this is a crisis right now. People losing their homes unfairly, people losing their homes in violation of the law. Albany can't wait. We need help now. And we need stronger rent regulations for the city of New York. We need it for today's city. This is a fight that's gone on for years and years. But look what's happening today. The case for stronger rent laws is clearer than ever. To preserve this city as a place for everyone, we need more than ever to protect the 1 million rent-regulated apartments in this city. Think of how crucial that is. If this is going to be a city for all, well into its future, if this is going to be a city that continues its historic success and inclusion, those 1 million rent-regulated units are right there in the core of the matter. It is, for so many New Yorkers, the only way they make ends meet. It's the only path they have to the middle class. We need to go and fight for the kinds of laws that will protect them. And if Albany believes in opportunity for all, then we will see rent laws strengthened in 2015. And if they don't do that, then we call on the state to provide funding to help these tenants directly, to help them help themselves by funding free legal services to victims of landlord neglect or harassment. So we're calling on Albany to step up, and we will step up as well. Today I'm announcing that in any of the areas the city rezones, if we find evidence that tenants are being harassed, we, the City of New York, will supply these tenants with legal representation at no cost to take their case to housing court to seek justice before a judge. We will protect our own people. It is the right thing to do. It is necessary for our future. It's a critical step in keeping this place affordable. And I want to also note that we have had tremendous partnership with the City Council. They have pushed this constantly, the need to provide legal services to protect our tenants, and we're going to achieve this with the Council, and in large measure because of the leadership of the Council. Let's thank them for having made such a focus of this. So, bringing the pieces together, all the steps I've talked about on affordable housing today, from responsibly building up, to placing new demands on developers, to providing affordable housing for New Yorkers, to focusing on those who need it most, to targeting predatory landlords. It's all part of new rules that we have created for helping people keep or find a home they can afford. So this is about going at income inequality, the way it plays out for so many of our people in terms of the costs they have to pay every day. The number one expense in the lives of the vast majority of New Yorkers, housing. If you want to fight income inequality, a simple task: reduce the cost of housing. That makes so much more possible for our people. So, we're focused on interpreting our efforts to address the tale of two cities in terms of bringing down expenses. That's what we're going to focus on in 2015. But there is the other end of the equation, and that fight never ends, because it's crucial to lower the expenses of hardworking people. But to be fair, nothing does more to address income inequality than actually raising people's incomes. I bet you've guessed this one already. There's one critical step that could do so much good. Let's raise the minimum wage. Now, Albany has shown some promising signs on that subject, but it needs to be more than just talk. And it's going to have a real impact on those of us living here in New York City. We need more. The current minimum wage proposal simply doesn't do enough for New York City. It doesn't do enough for our people, not with our cost of living. That's why we will fight to raise New York City's minimum wage to more than $13 per hour next year. And it may seem arcane, but it's absolutely essential. We will fight to add indexing to the minimum wage, which will bring us to a projected $15 an hour by 2019. That's how we get to $15 an hour. And why is indexing so important? Because it means that hardworking people have a guarantee about what their minimum wage will be. They won't have to wait years and years and years for politicians to make a decision. Their minimum wage will automatically grow with inflation. That's what indexing means. When you think about it, it's such a common sense idea. We're just talking about a decent minimum wage, and it must grow with inflation so people can actually afford to live. It's difficult to overstate the positive impact this would have on working New Yorkers. Even for those who earn more than the minimum wage right now, this action would create an upward pull on wages for all, an upward pull on opportunity, an upward pull on our whole economy. Now I'll throw you a little curveball. Indeed, Henry Ford, the noted left-wing socialist, Henry Ford, he wanted the workers on his assembly line to be able to purchase the cars they worked to build. Famous part of American history. He wanted people to make enough money to purchase the cars they helped to build. That was a concept that helped fuel America's great economic growth. Henry Ford paid his workers a generous living wage. Now, I assure you, he didn't do it to be charitable. That wasn't who he was. He did it because he knew it was good for business. He knew it would create a market for his product. And I think it worked out pretty well for old Henry, don't you? So all the pieces go together, creating more affordable housing, raising wages and benefits, strengthening our neighborhoods by better connecting them to jobs and opportunity. That is how we take on the tale of two cities. Now, it won't be easy. I think we established that earlier today. It won't be easy. And we know there will be critics who will say, once again, it can't be done. That is the simple default position for so many critics. It can't be done. There are those who will say very openly that our city is destined to be a city for the privileged few, not a city for all anymore. But New York City is no stranger to facing big challenges. We have overcome many, many doubting Thomases before. We know how to stare down these challenges. In fact, we revel in proving the critics wrong. 30 years ago, in his 1985 State of the City address, Mayor Ed Koch announced what was at the time an absolutely unprecedented plan for affordable housing. He understood the transformative power of city government to revitalize whole communities that had struggled so much. His administration stated a very simple idea. They said, we're creating more than just apartments, we're recreating neighborhoods. Guess what? There were those who said it couldn't be done. Historian Jonathan Soffer wrote of the response to Koch's plan. He said, quote, it was an extremely risky move. Some experts said at first that Koch's goal was inspirational rather than realistic. Well, let me just say, I can relate to that. I can relate to having big plans called inspirational rather than realistic. I've heard very similar criticisms. But now we know. We know that Koch's plan was realistic. In fact, it worked beautifully. And it had a transcendent impact on our city. A city that was struggling and shrinking in Ed Koch's time turned around. And so today, we face a different kind of challenge. We face the challenge of a city in which more and more and more people want to live. On one level, it's a nice problem to have, but it's still fundamentally a challenge. We will simply not lose sight of who we are. We won't lose sight of why our city is a beacon for so many and has been for generations. We can say honestly, our greatness is not because of what makes some other places great. We are not the cleanest place in the world. We are not the most tranquil place. We don't have the best weather, as we've seen this week. We don't have many alluring natural landmarks. We have something special, something unique, an idea that's at the core of who we are, a promise that ours is a city for everyone and will always be a city for everyone. In our time, we are charged with the sacred duty of keeping that promise, and we won't fail at that mission. John F. Kennedy put it well. He said, "There are risks and costs to a program of action, but they are far less than the long-range risks and costs of comfortable inaction." Like the people of this great city, like the people in this room today, our administration is about action, and will continue to lead a city that reflects all that is great about the human experience, and a city government that shows all that New York City is and can be, and that we are so honored to be a part of. The energy of this city makes so many things possible. To all New Yorkers, I say, your energy invigorates us. Your compassion inspires us. Your resolve compels us to move forward. And now, my fellow New Yorkers, now, let's get to work. Let's do it now. Thank you, and God bless you all.